Hi guys, tonight we travel farther back than any city, any kingdom, or any written story. You find yourself standing beneath a vast African sky nearly 200,000 years ago. Evening settles slowly across the grasslands. The last orange light lingers on distant hills, and a cool breeze drifts through scattered acacia trees. Somewhere nearby, a small fire crackles softly. Its glow flickers against faces that look remarkably familiar. These people have no metal tools, no roads, no books, and certainly no smartphones buzzing in their pockets. Yet they possess something extraordinarily valuable. Hidden inside their minds is a survival instinct that will help carry humanity across continents and through countless generations. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, leave a comment sharing your location and your local time. Now, dim the lights and let yourself settle beside the fire. The warmth reaches your skin first. After a long day beneath the sun, that warmth feels precious. Nights in prehistoric Africa could become surprisingly cool. Fire offers comfort, protection, and perhaps most importantly, a place to gather. You sit among a small group of early humans. Their faces glow amber in the firelight. Shadows dance across cheeks and brows. Children lean against parents. Older members rest quietly after the day's travels. The world around them is beautiful, but it is not always safe. Large predators roam these lands. Lions move through tall grasses. Hyenas wander across open plains. Leopards rest in trees and watch silently from above. You might imagine that surviving such dangers required constant bravery. Yet one of humanity's oldest advantages was not fearlessness at all. It was careful awareness. Researchers studying human evolution generally agree that early Homo sapiens appeared in Africa roughly 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, long before cities or agriculture emerged. These humans relied on observation, cooperation, and alertness to stay alive. The survival instinct developing within them was not simply about running from danger. It involved paying attention. You notice how often the group pauses to listen. A distant rustle causes several heads to turn. No one panics, no one leaps to conclusions. Instead, they listen. The sound fades, perhaps only wind moving through grass. Life often depended on correctly interpreting such signals. Today, many people check notifications dozens of times each day. Back then, attention worked very differently. Every sound carried potential information. Every smell might reveal water, food, weather, or danger. You begin to understand that awareness itself became a tool. The fire crackles again. Someone adds another piece of wood. The scent of smoke drifts upward into the darkening sky. This scene may appear peaceful, yet beneath that calm exists a remarkable mental system shaped by countless generations. Your ancestors became experts at noticing patterns. The ability helped them survive droughts. It helped them find animals. It helped them avoid predators. And over thousands of generations, this pattern-seeking instinct grew stronger. You watch as one member of the group studies the horizon. Clouds gather in the distance. Nothing dramatic. Just subtle changes in color and shape. Yet those changes matter. Rain influences migration routes. It affects plants, animals, and available water. The person observing those clouds may be making important decisions without fully realizing it. The human brain evolved to collect clues from the environment and transform them into predictions. That instinct still lives inside you today. Sometimes it appears when you sense a storm approaching before checking the forecast. Sometimes it emerges when you enter a room and immediately notice tension between people. Ancient instincts often wear modern clothing. The darkness deepens. Stars begin appearing overhead. Without electric lights, the night sky seems almost impossibly large. Thousands upon thousands of stars fill the heavens. You hear insects singing nearby. The steady rhythm blends with the crackling fire. A child points upward, perhaps wondering about those distant lights, perhaps simply enjoying the view. Nobody here knows astronomy, nobody has mapped constellations, yet curiosity already exists, and curiosity itself may have become another survival advantage. Groups that explored, learned, and adapted often gained access to new resources. Of course. Scholars remain divided on exactly which traits gave Homo sapiens their greatest evolutionary advantage. Some emphasize cooperation, others point toward language, creativity, or social intelligence. Most likely, several strengths work together, like strands woven into a rope. Tonight, beside this fire, you begin seeing those strands. Awareness, memory, curiosity, cooperation, patience. None appear dramatic, yet together they become powerful. A gentle wind brushes your face. The firelight flickers. An older member of the group begins making soft sounds while gesturing with their hands, perhaps sharing information, perhaps telling an early story. Communication among early humans was probably more sophisticated than many people once assumed. Exactly how language developed remains uncertain. Some researchers suggest complex speech evolved gradually over long periods, while others argue for faster changes in human cognition. Either way, communication transformed survival. Imagine trying to explain the location of water without language, or warning others about a dangerous animal, or teaching children which plants are safe to eat. Words, gestures, and shared understanding became tools as valuable as stone blades. You watch several younger members listening carefully. Knowledge moves from one generation to another, not through books, not through schools, but through memory. One evening at a time, the smell of smoke grows slightly stronger as the fire settles. Nearby, someone adjusts a cloak made from animal skin. The texture appears rough compared to modern fabrics, yet it provides warmth. Comfort matters more than luxury. In fact, one quirky detail about prehistoric life often surprises people. Evidence suggests early humans sometimes transported useful materials across significant distances, carrying valuable stone or resources far from their original source. Even in this ancient world, people planned ahead. The future mattered, another deeply human trait. You glance toward the darkness beyond the fire. The night remains mysterious, yet it no longer feels entirely threatening. The group's shared vigilance creates safety. Many eyes notice what one pair might miss. Many ears hear what one person cannot. And here, perhaps, you encounter the ancient survival instinct at the heart of our story. Not aggression, not domination, not endless competition, but collective awareness. Humans survive because they learn to pay attention together. The fire burns steadily. The stars brighten overhead. Children grow sleepy. Conversations soften. The cool air settles across the landscape. You sit quietly among these distant ancestors and begin to sense something remarkable. Though separated by 200,000 years, their minds are not entirely foreign. The same instincts that encourage you to notice a strange sound at night, seek comfort among friends, or watch storm clouds gathering on the horizon were already taking shape here, beside this humble fire, under these ancient stars. At the beginning of a very long journey, you remain close to the fire as night gathers fully around the ancient camp. The sky has turned deep blue, then black, and the edges of the world have softened into shadow. The grass beyond the firelight moves gently in the wind. Every blade seems to whisper against the next, somewhere far away. An animal calls once, then grows quiet. This is the listening dark for early humans. Night was not empty. It was full of information. Before houses, locks, streetlights, and tiny glowing screens that politely ruined sleep. People relied on their senses in ways modern life rarely demands. Hearing was not background decoration. It was a survival skill. A small sound could mean rain approaching, branches shifting, animals moving, or another group travelling nearby. You notice that the people around you do not treat silence as simple quiet. They listen into it. The fire pops softly. A few sparks rise and disappear. An older woman turns her head toward a distant rustle. Her posture changes only slightly, but others notice. That is enough. Awareness passes through the group without a single shout. No panic, no chaos, just attention. In the world of early Homo sapiens, the body learned to respond before the mind built a long explanation. This is one reason humans became so good at detecting possible threats. The nervous system could sharpen hearing, tighten muscles, and prepare movement in a moment. A mainstream fact about human evolution is that early humans lived as hunter-gatherers for the vast majority of our species' history. Farming would not appear until much later, only around 12,000 years ago in several parts of the world. So for most of human existence, survival depended on reading landscapes directly. The night landscape especially required patience. You sit very still. The ground beneath you feels cool and slightly uneven. Dry earth presses against your legs. Smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of burned wood and warm ash. The smell clings faintly to hair, skin, and animal hides. A child shifts in sleep beside a parent. Someone murmurs softly. Then the camp settles again. You hear insects in waves, not a single sound, but layers. Some high and thin, some low and steady. The rhythm is almost comforting, like nature's old sleep machine, except this one does not need batteries and has no confusing app subscription. Beyond the insects, there are other noises. A branch creaks. Grass brushes against something unseen. A bird flutters in a tree. Each sound asks a question. Is it harmless? Is it near? Is it changing? The instinct to listen carefully may seem simple, yet it carried deep value. A person who could distinguish ordinary night sounds from unusual ones helped protect the group. Not every rustle meant danger. Of course, if you reacted wildly to everything, you would exhaust yourself before midnight, which is not ideal, even in the Stone Age, so the skill was not just hearing, it was judging. Early humans needed to decide when to relax and when to prepare. Researchers continue to question exactly how ancient people balanced alertness with rest. Some suggest that shared sleeping arrangements allowed part of the group to remain lightly aware while others slept more deeply. Others argue that natural differences in sleep patterns, especially between younger and older people, may have helped groups maintain some level of nighttime watchfulness. You look around the fire and can almost see that pattern. A few bodies are curled close together, breathing slowly. One young man sits upright, eyes open but calm. An older member of the group rests with head bowed, yet seems not fully asleep. The camp breathes in layers. Some dream, some listen, some hover between both. This gentle arrangement may be one of humanity's quiet triumphs. Alone, a person is vulnerable. Together, people can divide the burden of awareness. You hear another distant call. This one is lower. It rolls across the darkness and fades. Several faces lift. The sound may belong to a large predator, not close enough to threaten the camp, but close enough to remind everyone that the night has other inhabitants. No one speaks loudly. The fire is fed again. Wood shifts, flame rises, and warm light expands outward for a moment. It touches hands, knees, sleeping faces, and the dark outlines of simple stone tools resting nearby. Fire changed the human relationship with darkness. It offered light, warmth, cooked food, and some protection from animals. Scholars remain divided on exactly when controlled fire became common among human ancestors. Evidence exists from much earlier hominin sites, but how regularly fire was used, and by whom, remains a careful debate here in this imagined ancient evening. Fire creates a small island of safety. but the dark ocean remains around it. You understand why the human mind became sensitive to sound at night, even today. A tiny noise in the hallway can wake someone instantly. A refrigerator clicks, a pipe knocks, and suddenly the ancient brain is awake, asking its dramatic little question. Was that a leopard usually? No, usually it is the plumbing. But the old instinct does not know plumbing. It remembers grass, shadow, and teeth. You sit with that thought as the wind cools, the air brushes your arms, the warmth of the fire touches your face while your back feels the night behind you. This contrast becomes familiar. Warmth in front, darkness behind, safety close, uncertainty beyond. The people near you understand this without needing words for it. A quirky lesser-known tidbit from studies of traditional societies and ancient survival is that human hearing is especially tuned to certain irregular sounds, such as cracks, snaps, and sudden changes in rhythm. The brain often ignores steady background noise but reacts quickly to something unexpected. It is why a constant breeze may lull you, but one snap twig can make everyone look up. In this ancient camp, that ability matters. A steady insect chorus says the world is mostly normal. A sudden silence may say something has moved nearby. You notice that the listening never feels frantic. It is woven into rest. The group does not sit stiff with terror. They lean, breathe, murmur, adjust their hides, and drift in and out of sleep. This is not horror. This is adaptation, a calm form of readiness. The night continues. Stars shine above the open land, without city light. They appear almost close enough to touch. The Milky Way stretches like pale dust across the heavens. Someone glances upward, then back toward the grass. Beauty and caution live side by side. You begin to sense how ancient survival shape the human body. The ears listen, the skin feels temperature, the nose detects smoke, dampness, animals, and earth. The eye search for movement at the edge of light. The mind gathers all of it. Then it waits. And waiting, strangely enough, becomes wisdom. Because survival is not always action. Sometimes it is restraint. Sometimes it is knowing that the sound is only wind. Sometimes it is knowing that wind does not move like footsteps. The fire settles lower. A soft red glow remains beneath the branches. Someone shifts closer to the embers. Another person wraps an animal skin more tightly around their shoulders. The night has grown colder now, and the listening continues with slower breaths. You feel yourself becoming part of the circle. Your own breathing quiets. You stop trying to name every sound. You simply receive them. The insects, the grass, the low fire, the far animal call, the heartbeat of a sleeping child nearby. In this deep past, long before clocks measured hours, the night is measured by sound, and inside that sound, humanity learns one of its oldest lessons, to survive. You must notice the world, but to rest, you must also trust the circle around you. You leave the fire only when the first grey light begins to touch the edge of the world. The night does not vanish all at once. It thins slowly, like dark cloth becoming transparent. The stars fade. The grasses turn from black to silver. The smoke from the sleeping fire rises in a pale ribbon, carrying the quiet smell of ash into the morning air. You walk with a few members of the group toward the river. The ground is cool beneath bare feet and simple coverings. Damp earth presses softly with each step, somewhere nearby. Birds begin their careful morning calls, not a chorus yet, just scattered notes, as if the day is testing its voice. Before you reach the water, you notice the mud. It holds marks. Some are deep and round, some are narrow, some overlap. To modern eyes, they may look like messy footprints beside a riverbank. To the people around you, they're a kind of message. Here, something passed. Here, something paused. Here, something heavy moved slowly toward the reeds. This is the ancient art of pattern recognition for early humans. Landscapes were not blank spaces. They were pages full of clues: a broken twig, a crushed patch of grass, a feather caught on thorns, a faint scent near the water. All of these could speak to anyone patient enough to notice. A mainstream historical fact is that prehistoric hunter-gatherers depended on tracking animals and reading environmental signs long before written language existed. Their survival often rested on understanding movement across land, water, and seasons. You kneel beside the riverbank. The mud is cold and smooth. It smells of wet clay, plants, and faint animal musk. Tiny insects move across the surface. A frog slips quietly into the water with a soft plop, which is probably the prehistoric version of saying, "Please do not involve me in human affairs." One of the trackers points to a print. You follow the shape with your eyes. The edges are still sharp. The water has not filled it. This track is recent. Another person studies the direction of the toes, then looks toward a line of trees beyond the river. No one needs a long speech. The group understands enough. An animal has passed through, perhaps antelope, perhaps something larger. The exact species matters less than the lesson. The mind is turning marks into meaning. You begin to see how powerful this instinct became. Pattern recognition allowed early humans to connect small details into larger stories. Not stories for entertainment, at least not yet, but stories of survival. An animal drank here. A herd moved east. Rain fell yesterday. The ground ahead may be soft. Another group may have crossed nearby. In modern life, pattern recognition helps you read traffic, understand moods, notice routines, and decide whether that suspicious email is truly from your bank or from someone named Royal Finance Prince. Which, frankly, seems unlikely. But here beside the river, the skill is older and quieter. It is written in mud. The group follows the track slowly. The sun rises higher, touching the reeds with gold. Mist lifts from the water. You hear the soft rush of the current against stones. The air smells fresher here, carrying damp leaves and the faint sweetness of flowering plants. A child walks near the adults, trying to copy their careful steps. At first, the child sees only marks. Then one adult gently guides their attention. This print is deeper at the front. That means the animal pushed off in this direction. This grass is bent. That means something brushed through after sunrise. When dew is still clinging to the blades, the teaching is quiet, patient. No classroom, no chalkboard, no extremely confident online quiz titled, "Only geniuses can read these footprints." Just a riverbank, a child, and the slow transfer of knowledge. A lesser-known tidbit from studies of tracking traditions is that skilled trackers often use more than footprints. They notice displaced pebbles, insect activity, scent, bird behavior, and even how sunlight dries different parts of a track. A print is not one clue. It is part of a living pattern. You pause beside a patch of reeds. The mud changes here. The prints scatter. Something happened. Maybe the animal startled. Maybe it turned suddenly after hearing movement. The tracker stops. You feel the group's attention gather, the same collective awareness you felt beside the fire. Everyone becomes still. Eyes scan the reeds. Ears listen beyond the river noise. Nothing emerges. Only wind. Only water. Still, the moment matters. This is how the ancient brain worked at its best. It noticed change. It compared the present with memory. It asked, softly and quickly, "What does this mean?" Researchers continue to question how much of early human tracking came from instinct and how much came from learned culture. Some argue that humans possess natural pattern-seeking tendencies shaped by evolution. Others emphasize the immense training required to read landscapes accurately. Both ideas can sit together comfortably. A child may be born ready to notice patterns, but the world teaches which patterns matter. The group moves again. You follow along the river's edge. Small stones press into your feet. The sunlight warms your shoulders. A breeze carries the smell of wet grass and distant dust. The river glimmers in gentle flashes. Ahead, birds rise suddenly from the reeds. The group pauses. This time, the movement means something. Birds often respond to disturbance before humans can see its source. Their sudden flight may signal an animal hidden nearby. Again, no one panics. The group simply adjusts. They move more slowly, they spread slightly apart. The ancient survival instinct is not loud, it is flexible. It changes with each clue. You notice how every person contributes a different view. One looks at the ground, one watches the reeds, one listens behind, one keeps the child close. This shared attention turns many small senses into one larger awareness. In a world without maps, the land itself must be read, and the reading never ends. The riverbank shows the past few hours. The sky suggests the coming weather. The plants reveal the season. The animals reveal hidden water and open paths. You begin to understand that early humans did not live outside nature as visitors. They lived inside its sentences. Every morning, the world wrote again. Every morning, they had to read it. As the sun climbs, the group finds more signs, droppings near the trail, scraped bark on a low branch, a place where grass has been pressed flat by resting bodies. These details are not glamorous, perhaps, but history is often made from unglamorous things. Mud, ash, bone, seeds, footprints, the ordinary remains of extraordinary survival. You look back toward the camp, now hidden by distance and trees. The fire circle waits behind you, quiet in the morning light. Ahead, the river continues, curving through reeds and stones. You walk between memory and possibility. Behind you are the marks already made. Before you are signs not yet understood, and inside your mind, ancient and patient, the pattern-seeking instinct keeps working. It gathers shapes, it compares sounds, it remembers yesterday, it prepares for tomorrow. Not with drama, not with certainty, just with attention. Beside the river, in soft mud under the widening morning sky, you witness one of humanity's earliest gifts, the ability to notice a mark in the earth and imagine what happened before you arrived. You continue beneath the widening morning sky, leaving the river's soft mud behind as the land opens into pale grass and scattered shade. The sun is warmer now. It rests gently on your shoulders and brightens the tops of the reeds. The group moves slowly, not with laziness, but with care. Every step is a small decision. Every pause has a purpose. This is a world before fields, barns, bread ovens, markets, coins, or those little plastic containers in the back of the refrigerator that everyone is quietly afraid to open. Food does not wait on shelves here. Food must be found. For early humans, hunger was not simply an uncomfortable feeling before lunch. It was a constant companion, sometimes quiet, sometimes urgent, always shaping the rhythm of the day. The body listened to hunger the way the ears listened to the night. It was information. You walk with the foragers across uneven ground. Dry grass brushes your legs. Dust rises faintly with each step. The air smells of warm earth, crushed leaves, and distant water. A few insects drift lazily through the light. The group does not move randomly. They remember. They remember where certain roots grow after rain. They remember which trees fruit during which season. They remember where animals passed last year when the grass dried and the water holes shrank. A mainstream historical fact is that early Homo sapiens survived as hunter-gatherers for most of human history, relying on wild plants, animals, fish, shellfish, seeds, nuts, and seasonal resources rather than farming. This way of life required deep knowledge of local ecosystems. You watch as one woman bends near a cluster of plants. Her hand moves carefully, brushing aside dry stems. She studies the leaves, the shape, the colour, the soil around the base. Then she digs gently with a pointed stick and loosens a root from the ground. It is not dramatic. No triumphant music plays. The root is small, dusty, and stubborn. Yet in this world, small things matter. A few roots, a handful of seeds, a nest of eggs found at the right time, a patch of berries remembered from last season. Survival is often built from modest gifts. You notice that nobody grabs everything at once. The group gathers with attention. Some plants are left behind, some are avoided entirely. The knowledge of what is safe, useful, bitter, healing, or dangerous has been learned over generations. And probably through a few unfortunate experiments that nobody wished to repeat, you can almost hear the ancient warning, "Do not eat that one." Why? Because Cousin learned the hard way. A gentle lesson, very educational, very unpleasant for Cousin. The smell of crushed greenery rises as leaves are handled. One child holds a small fruit and waits for approval before tasting it. An adult nods. The child bites carefully, juice shining briefly on their lips. Food is not only nutrition here. It is memory, it is trust, it is teaching. Researchers continue to question exactly how varied prehistoric diets were across different environments. Some emphasize the importance of hunted meat and marrow, while others point out that gathered plant foods likely provided steady calories in many regions. The balance changed depending on climate, season, landscape, and available species. Here, under the warm sun, you see that flexibility is the real genius. Humans did not survive by eating one perfect food. They survived by learning many possibilities. The group moves toward a patch of shade. The ground is cooler there. A low tree spreads thin branches above you, leaves flickering in the light. Someone cracks open a hard seed with a stone. The sound is small and sharp. Tap. Pause. Tap again. Inside is something edible. Not much, perhaps, but enough. A lesser-known tidbit from archaeological studies is that ancient people often used digging sticks, grinding stones, and simple pounding tools long before polished farming equipment existed. Some plant processing may have taken considerable time, which means prehistoric meals were not always just quick bites picked from bushes. Sometimes dinner still required effort, patience, and the prehistoric version of meal prep. You sit briefly in the shade and feel the texture of the ground through your hands. Dry grass, gritty soil, a few fallen leaves curled at the edges. The foragers sort what they have gathered. Nothing is wasted casually. Hard shells may be cracked. Fibers may be stripped. Leaves may be carried. The body has needs, but the mind has plans. That planning is one of the great survival instincts hidden beneath the day's simple movements. Hunger asks for food now. Wisdom asks what may be needed later. Early humans had to balance both. Eat too much today, and tomorrow may be harder. Carry too much, and walking becomes slower. Leave too much, and hunger follows. There is no app for this. No calorie tracker. No helpful little notification saying, "Congratulations, you've found 8 roots and avoided 3 questionable mushrooms." There is only experience, and experience lives inside the group. You rise again and follow as the land slopes gently upward. From here, you can see patches of different vegetation, darker green near water, pale grass on drier ground, thorny shrubs in loose clusters. Each zone offers different possibilities. The people around you read these differences calmly. They know that certain birds may lead them toward fruiting trees. They know animal droppings may reveal what nearby creatures have eaten. They know bees may suggest honey, if someone is brave and careful enough, and preferably not allergic. Although nobody here has a convenient medical bracelet. Honey would be a rare sweetness in the ancient world. Wild honey, when found, offered dense energy. Some researchers believe honey gathering may have been important in certain hunter-gatherer diets, especially where bee colonies were accessible. You imagine the taste. Warm, floral, sticky on fingers, a small luxury beneath an enormous sky. Even ancient survival had moments of pleasure. The group pauses near tracks crossing the grass. These are not the riverbank prints from earlier, but lighter marks through dry stems. Someone studies them. Another scans the horizon. Hunger and awareness blend together. The search for food is also the search for risk. Where prey animals gather, predators may follow. Where water is found, other groups may appear. Nothing exists alone. The world's a web of signs. You begin to understand how hunger sharpened human intelligence. It forced memory to grow detailed. It rewarded curiosity. It made cooperation useful. One person might know plants, another might track animals, another might remember a seasonal path. Shared knowledge turned hunger from a private ache into a group problem, and group problems could be solved. The sun climbs higher. Heat begins to gather over the open land. The scent of dust grows stronger. A fly circles near your ear, persistent and rude, as flies have apparently been for a very long time. The group turns back toward the camp with what they have collected. Not a feast, not a banquet, but enough to matter. Roots, seeds, perhaps fruit, perhaps useful leaves, food carried in hands, skins, or woven plant fibers. Small treasures from a generous but demanding land. As you walk, you feel hunger differently. Not as an enemy, as an ancient signal, a guide, a reminder that the body belongs to the earth around it. The survival instinct here is not only to search, but to remember where life hides, beneath soil, behind thorns, inside shells, within seasons, along paths where animals move and water waits. By the time the distant smoke of the camp comes back into view, you understand something quiet and profound. For early humans, survival was not a single heroic act. It was the daily practice of noticing what the world offered, taking enough, sharing carefully, and returning tomorrow to look again. You return toward the camp as the light shifts again, the sun now higher and harsher, turning the grass into waves of pale gold. The group carries its gathered food in quiet rhythm. Nothing is hurried, nothing is wasted. Even movement has an economy to it, as if the body itself has learned the value of conserving energy for moments that truly matter. And that is where fear begins to reveal itself, not as chaos, not as panic, but as a quiet, shaping presence that walks alongside you. By the time you reach the familiar fire circle, the remains of the night are almost gone. Ash cools into grey powder. A few embers still glow faintly beneath half-burned wood. Someone tends it gently, coaxing it back into usefulness with careful breath and small twigs. Fear, in this world, is not a sudden invention. It is already there, woven into every decision. A mainstream fact from neuroscience and anthropology is that the human brain contains deeply ancient structures such as the amygdala, which plays a central role in detecting threats and triggering rapid emotional responses. These systems evolved long before modern civilization, helping early Homo sapiens survive in environments filled with predators, uncertainty, and sudden change. You notice it now in the way people settle. Not everyone sits the same way. Some face outward, toward the grassland, some remain closer to the fire, some scan the horizon without appearing to try. This is fear, but refined by experience, not the kind that freezes everything, the kind that organizes attention. A rustle in the distance makes a few heads turn. A bird alarm call sharpens the air. Even the wind feels like information. You feel it too, though no one explains it. Your senses seem slightly brighter, slightly more sensitive, as if the world has turned the volume up just enough to matter. Fear, here, is not the enemy of peace. It is its condition. Without it, the fire circle would not exist. Without it, people would not gather. Without it, the night would swallow the group without resistance. You sit near others and notice how fear is distributed, almost shared like a resource. One person watches while another rests. One listens while another prepares food. One remains alert while another drifts into sleep. In this way, fear becomes collective rather than individual, and that changes everything. A lesser-known tidbit from studies of human behaviour in hunter-gatherer societies is that groups often show what researchers sometimes call vigilance sharing. Not everyone remains fully alert at the same time. Instead, attention rotates naturally, influenced by environment, experience, and subtle social cues. This creates a continuous but non-exhausting awareness of surroundings. You see something like that unfolding here. A young member of the group sits slightly apart, eyes open, watching the grass beyond the firelight. An older person rests nearby, breathing slow, yet still aware enough to respond if needed. A child sleeps fully, unburdened by responsibility, wrapped in warmth and safety created by others. Fear, in its most useful form, is not constant intensity. It is rhythm, like breathing, like waves of attention rising and falling. You shift slightly and feel the texture of the ground beneath you again. The earth is warmer now where the sun has touched it. The smell of smoke is softer in daylight, less sharp than at night. The world feels calmer, but not safe in any absolute sense. Safety is always relative here. A distant movement catches your eye. A herd of animals passes far away, small shapes against the horizon. They move together in tight formation, alert and fluid. Even at this distance, you can sense their sensitivity. One sudden motion, and the group might scatter instantly. Fear exists there too, not just in humans, but across life. A shared language of survival. Researchers continue to question how early humans balanced fear and curiosity. Some suggest that high sensitivity to threat detection was essential for survival in predator-rich environments. Others argue that excessive fear would have limited exploration and reduced access to resources, meaning groups needed individuals who were more exploratory and less easily alarmed. Both tendencies likely coexisted, a careful tension between caution and curiosity. You notice it in yourself as well. Part of you wants to stay near the fire, part of you wants to walk toward the open land. That balance is ancient. The group begins processing the food gathered earlier. Stones are used to break shells, fibers are separated, roots are cleaned. The work is steady, practiced, almost meditative. Yet even here, fear does not disappear, it shifts shape. It becomes caution around tools. Attention to sharp edges, awareness of fingers near stone. A misplaced strike could injure someone. An injury in this world is not a small inconvenience. It is a serious vulnerability. So even survival tasks carry a quiet undercurrent of alertness. You watch as someone demonstrates how to crack a seed properly, showing the angle, the pressure, the timing. The lesson is simple, but the stakes are not. Knowledge reduces fear. Ignorance amplifies it. That is one of the oldest patterns of human life. As afternoon light warms the camp, you notice how fear changes with temperature and visibility. In bright daylight, it softens. Edges of uncertainty become clearer. Movement can be seen from farther away. The world feels more legible. At night, as you remember from earlier, everything becomes interpretation. But here in daylight, fear becomes quieter, not gone, just resting. A quirky detail often noted in psychological studies is that humans can experience fear contagion, meaning that observing fear in others can trigger similar responses in oneself, even without direct threat. in early human groups. This likely helped coordinate rapid reactions to danger, but it could also amplify unnecessary alarm if misread signals spread too quickly. You imagine how that might feel in a small group, one startled glance, one tense posture, and suddenly everyone is more alert, even before knowing why. So trust becomes essential. Trust that signals are accurate. Trust that others will respond appropriately. Trust that not every shadow is a predator. The group continues its quiet work. A breeze moves through the grassland, carrying dust and scent. Somewhere far off, thunder may be forming, though no one speaks of it yet. Weather is another source of ancient fear, not because it is malicious, but because it is powerful and indifferent. You look at the sky and try to read it the way they do. Cloud shape, colour shift, wind direction, subtle cues that suggest change. Fear, in this sense, is not only about animals or enemies, it is about unpredictability itself. The world is always larger than understanding, and so the mind stays ready. As the day moves forward, the fire is rebuilt more fully. Flames rise again, more confident now. Smoke curls upward and disappears into blue sky. The camp settles into a familiar rhythm of rest, preparation, and quiet awareness. You begin to see fear less as a feeling and more as a tool, a signal that says, pay attention, a system that sharpens perception when it matters, a companion that never fully leaves, even in calm moments, and yet, within this constant alertness, life continues gently. Children play near adults, food is shared, work is completed without rush. Laughter appears briefly, soft and surprising, breaking tension like sunlight through leaves. Even fear, it seems, has limits. It does not erase joy, it only frames it. As the afternoon deepens, you sit among them and realize something subtle. Fear did not evolve to make life smaller. It evolved to make survival possible. And within that survival, there is space for warmth, for a connection, and for quiet moments that feel almost like peace. The afternoon light softens as you remain within the camp, where the fire has now settled into a steady, familiar presence. The flames are not large, but they are reliable, like an old companion that never speaks but always responds when needed. Smoke drifts upward in thin threads, dissolving into the sky where heat ripples gently above the ground. You notice faces more clearly now. Without the urgency of night or the tension of travel, people become easier to read. Expressions are small but meaningful, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a relaxed jaw, a hand resting instead of gripping. These subtle shifts form a language older than spoken words. One of the most important developments in early human evolution was the ability to interpret social cues. Long before complex speech fully developed, humans relied heavily on gesture, posture, and facial expression to coordinate group behavior. This ability strengthened cooperation, which in turn improved survival in unpredictable environments. You sit near a cluster of people sorting gathered materials. A stone tool is passed from hand to hand, not because it is precious in a material sense, but because it carries skill, weight, memory. One person demonstrates a careful scraping motion on a hide. Another watches closely, adjusting their grip slightly afterward. There is no formal instruction, yet learning is happening constantly, embedded in observation. A lesser-known detail from archaeological findings is that wear patterns on ancient tools suggest repeated refinement over generations. Small adjustments in angle, pressure, and shape indicate that knowledge was not only shared, but gradually improved through practice and imitation. You realize that intelligence here is not separated from daily life. It is inside it. A child sits nearby, quietly observing adults. No one is directly teaching, yet the child learns anyway, how to hold objects, when to speak, when to stay silent, how attention moves through a group, Everything is instruction. Everything is observation. The wind shifts slightly, bringing the scent of dry grass and smoke across the camp. A few strands of hair move across faces. Someone adjusts their position to face the breeze, as if the body itself is constantly negotiating with the environment. In this world, even comfort is dynamic. Nothing stays fixed for long. You notice a small exchange between two individuals near the edge of the fire circle. One offers a portion of gathered food, the other accepts without hesitation. There is no written record of fairness, no formal system of exchange, yet balance is understood. Social cooperation in early human groups likely depended on long-term reciprocity rather than immediate repayment. Individuals who shared resources tended to receive support later, especially in times of scarcity or injury. Trust becomes a kind of invisible structure holding the group together. Not absolute trust, not blind trust, but practiced trust, shaped by experience. A small sound breaks the rhythm of the camp. A branch snaps somewhere beyond the immediate clearing. Heads lift, not all at once, just enough to notice. The fire remains steady, but attention briefly expands outward. Nothing follows the sound. It fades into the ordinary noise of the landscape. Still. The moment leaves a trace in awareness. You begin to understand how finely tuned this attention system is. Not every stimulus triggers action. Instead, the mind evaluates, compares, and decides whether something belongs to the expected pattern or deviates from it. This ability to filter and prioritize sensory input is a core feature of human cognition, and it likely played a crucial role in survival on open landscapes, where threats and harmless events often looked similar at first glance. A quirky detail sometimes mentioned in studies of early perception is that humans are especially sensitive to movement at the edge of vision. This peripheral awareness would have helped detect approaching animals or people without needing direct focus, allowing groups to remain engaged in tasks while still monitoring surroundings. You test this instinct without meaning to. A flicker of movement near the grass line. Your eyes shift before you consciously decide. Nothing there now, only wind. The group returns to its quiet activity. Someone repairs a tool by pressing a stone against its edge with practiced rhythm. Another arranges bundles of plant material for drying. The sounds are small, repetitive, calming. Clack, pause, scrape, pause. These rhythms form the background of survival. Researchers often emphasize that early human cognition was shaped not only by large dramatic events, but by repeated exposure to routine environmental patterns. Over time, the brain becomes efficient at predicting what should happen next, reducing unnecessary alertness and conserving energy. But prediction is never perfect. That uncertainty keeps attention alive. You look toward the horizon again. The sky is brighter now, almost washed with pale blue. Heat shimmer rises in visible waves. Insects drift lazily through the air. The world feels expansive but not overwhelming. A group member begins arranging stones in a small circle near the fire. The purpose is not immediately obvious. It might be practical, or it might be symbolic, or both. Prehistoric life often blurs that line. Tools and meaning frequently overlap. A carved object might be useful and also expressive. A pattern might help grip and also signal identity. Some researchers suggest that symbolic thinking emerged gradually through repeated social interaction, while others propose that it appeared more suddenly as cognitive capacity reached a threshold. The evidence doesn't fully resolve the debate, leaving space for multiple interpretations. You watch the stone arrangement continue, one by one. Pieces are placed with care, not rushed, not random, nearby. Someone pauses to observe, then returns to their task. Meaning is being created quietly, without announcement. As the afternoon settles deeper, the camp becomes more relaxed. Bodies stretch, movements slow. The intensity of morning foraging fades into a softer rhythm of maintenance and rest. You notice how energy is carefully managed. Rest is not laziness here. It is preparation. The body recovers because tomorrow will require movement again. A breeze passes through, carrying warmth instead of coolness now. Dust lifts briefly from the ground before settling again. The smell of smoke, earth, and plant matter blends into a familiar scent that defines this place. It is not home in the modern sense, but it is familiar, and familiarity, in a dangerous world, is a form of safety. You sit back slightly and feel the weight of that realization. Survival here is not a single instinct. It is a layered system. Observation, memory, cooperation, trust, flexibility, and underneath all of it, a steady awareness that the world is always changing, always offering both opportunity and risk in the same moment. As light begins its slow shift toward evening again, the group remains calm but attentive, like a body resting while still listening, and you understand something quietly profound. The survival instinct is not only about reacting to danger, it is about staying open to life while never fully forgetting that danger exists. Evening begins its slow return, though it is not yet night. The sun lowers toward the horizon, stretching long shadows across the grassland. The fire at the center of the camp is rebuilt again, not because anyone commands it, but because everyone understands its importance. Flame is part of rhythm here, like breathing, like waking, like sleep. You notice how the group gradually shifts closer together as the light changes. This is not spoken, it happens naturally. Bodies adjust to the fading day the way plants turn toward light. In early human societies, social cohesion was not only cultural but deeply practical. Groups that remained close together were more likely to detect danger early, share food efficiently, and protect vulnerable members. Distance meant vulnerability, closeness meant survival. You sit among them as the air cools, the warmth of the day begins to drain from the ground, and a familiar sense returns. The transition between day and night is always when awareness sharpens slightly. Not fear exactly. Something quieter. Readiness. Someone passes near the fire carrying dried wood. The smell of sap rises briefly as it catches heat. A small crackle follows as flame finds new fuel. You watch how easily attention moves through the group. A glance is enough. A gesture is enough. No long explanations are needed. Understanding is shared in fragments. A mainstream fact in anthropology is that early Homo sapiens likely relied heavily on non-verbal communication for coordination, especially in environments where quick responses mattered more than detailed explanations. Gesture, tone, posture, and timing formed a complex system of meaning long before formalized language structures became widespread. You notice this now in something as simple as how food is divided. No one argues loudly, no one counts precisely. Instead, portions are distributed with a sense of balance shaped by memory and expectation. Who hunted earlier? Who gathered more? Who is resting? Who is caring for a child? Everything is part of an unspoken calculation. A lesser-known detail from studies of foraging societies is that food sharing often follows flexible rules rather than strict equality. Contribution, need, age, and circumstance all influence how resources move within a group, creating a dynamic system that adjusts daily. You're given a portion, it is simple, root, perhaps softened by heat, maybe mixed with something slightly bitter but nourishing. You eat slowly. The taste is earthy, grounded, tied directly to the landscape you walked through earlier. There is no separation between environment and meal. Everything is connected. Nearby, children begin to gather close to adults again as evening approaches. Their energy shifts. Less movement, more listening. They sit near knees, shoulders, or backs, forming small clusters of safety. A quiet sound drifts through the group. Not a warning, not a call of alarm, something softer. A voice. One of the older members begins a low, rhythmic pattern of speech and gesture. The group responds by settling slightly, as if the sound itself organizes attention. This may be one of humanity's oldest tools, storytelling, before written records, before recorded history, before even formal teaching. Stories helped transmit survival knowledge, where to find food, how to avoid danger, what patterns the land follows, which animals behave in which ways. Researchers continue to explore how narrative thinking developed in early humans. Some suggest it evolved as a way to organize memory. Others propose it strengthened social bonds by aligning group understanding. The exact origin remains uncertain, but its importance is widely acknowledged. You listen without fully understanding the meaning of each gesture or sound. Yet the rhythm feels familiar. Repetitive, soothing, almost like the fire itself. Flame, pause, gesture, pause. The evening deepens slightly. Stars begin to reappear one by one. Faint at first, then stronger. The sky shifts from gold to deep blue. The air cools further, and people draw closer to the fire. You notice how storytelling changes the atmosphere. Earlier, attention was scattered, always scanning, always aware. Now attention gathers inward. The group becomes still, unified by shared focus. Fear does not disappear, but it softens. It is held at a distance by meaning. A quirky detail sometimes discussed in cognitive science is that storytelling may have helped early humans simulate experiences without direct exposure. By hearing about dangers and outcomes, individuals could mentally rehearse responses, improving survival without risk. This mental simulation may have been one of the foundations of imagination itself. You think about that as the voice continues. Not just information, preparation through imagination. The fire pops gently. A small ember drifts upward and disappears into the darkening sky. Someone adjusts their seating, pulling a hide closer around their shoulders. Another leans back, eyes half closed, yet still listening. The group is relaxed, but not fully asleep. This in-between state feels important. Awareness is not fully active. Rest is not complete. It is threshold space where safety and vigilance coexist. You begin to sense how deeply this rhythm shaped early human life. Day for movement, evening for gathering, night for shared protection, sleep surrounded by others, not alone. Researchers continue to discuss whether early human sleep patterns were segmented or continuous. Some evidence from modern hunter-gatherer groups suggests that sleep may have been lighter and more flexible, with periods of wakefulness distributed across the night. This would allow groups to maintain partial awareness even during rest. You look around the fire circle. It almost seems true here. Some people sleep deeply, some remain lightly alert, some shift between both states. The system is not formal. It simply works. A distant sound moves through the grass. This time, no one reacts strongly. Just a brief pause in conversation. Then calm resumes. Experience has already filtered it. Not every sound matters. The evening grows quieter. The storytelling voice lowers slightly, and the group leans in. Shadows lengthen. Firelight becomes more dominant than daylight. The world outside the circle fades into suggestion. You realize how powerful shared attention is when a group focuses together. Individual fear weakens. Meaning replaces uncertainty. The mind has less space to imagine random danger because it is occupied with shared narrative. This does not eliminate survival instinct. It organizes it. As night settles in more fully, the camp feels contained, almost like a small island of light in a wide ocean of dark grass. You sit within it and feel something subtle, not safety in the modern sense, but belonging. And belonging, in this ancient world, may have been one of the strongest survival advantages of all. The fire continues to burn, the story continues softly, and the night listens back. Night has now fully settled over the grasslands, and the camp exists as a single breathing circle of light surrounded by vast, quiet darkness. The fire has grown steadier again, not tall, but consistent, like a heartbeat made visible. Shadows stretch outward and then retreat, as if the world itself is gently inhaling and exhaling around you. The storytelling voice has faded into silence, leaving only the sound of fire and night insects. In that quiet, you become more aware of your hands. They rest near the warmth. They feel the heat rising from the stones beneath the fire. They feel the texture of the ground, slightly uneven, slightly dusty, shaped by countless feet over time. Hands are not just resting here, they are remembered. In early human evolution, hands played a central role in survival long before advanced tools existed. The ability to grip, shape, and carry objects allowed humans to adapt to many environments. Over time, fine motor control became closely linked with cognitive development. Reinforcing the connection between action and thought, you pick up a small stone near your feet. It is unremarkable at first glance, smooth in some places, rough in others. It fits into your palm in a way that feels natural, as if it was waiting there. You turn it slightly. The firelight catches its surface and reveals faint lines formed over time by water and sand. Nearby, someone is doing something similar, but with purpose. They are shaping a tool, not dramatically, not with ceremony, just steady repetition. Strike, pause, turn, inspect. A sharper edge slowly forms from a simple stone. A mainstream fact from archaeology is that stone tools used by early Homo sapiens and their ancestors, often referred to as part of the older one, and later Acheulean traditions, show increasing complexity over hundreds of thousands of years. This gradual refinement suggests that knowledge of toolmaking was passed down culturally, not just biologically inherited. You watch how the toolmaker pauses occasionally to examine the edge. Light reflects off the stone surface. The rhythm is patient, almost meditative. A lesser-known detail from experimental archaeology is that recreating ancient stone tools today requires significant practice. Even simple flakes demand careful control of angle and force. This suggests that prehistoric toolmaking was a skilled craft, learned over time through observation and repetition rather than instinct alone. The sound of stone striking stone becomes part of the night, soft, controlled, predictable. It does not disturb the calm, it adds to it. You notice how attention shifts within the group. Some people continue listening to the fire, others observe the tool making, others simply rest. Eyes closed but aware of sound and warmth. The group is not doing one thing, it is doing many things at once. This distributed awareness is part of what makes human groups so effective. Different individuals focus on different aspects of the environment, and together they form a wider understanding than any single person could achieve alone. You turn the stone in your hand again. It feels heavier now, not physically but mentally, as if holding it connects you to something older than language. A chain of hands stretching far back in time, each one shaping, learning, improving. Some researchers argue that tool use may have driven cognitive evolution in humans, encouraging planning, spatial reasoning, and cause and effect thinking. Others suggest that social learning played an even larger role, with tools serving primarily as a medium for transmitting shared knowledge. The discussion remains open, reflecting how intertwined behavior and biology truly are. You place the stone down carefully. The fire shifts slightly as a new piece of wood settles into place. A small burst of sparks rises briefly, then fades into the dark sky. Above you, stars continue to multiply as the night deepens. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a pale river of light, unchanged by time, though no one here names it or maps it. Yet it is seen, and seeing it matters. You notice how the group occasionally glances upward without speaking. The sky is not just background. It is part of orientation. Time, weather, and direction are all subtly read from it, even without formal astronomy. Early humans likely developed strong environmental awareness tied to celestial patterns. The regular movement of stars, the cycle of moon phases, and the shifting positions of constellations would have provided reliable markers for navigation and seasonal change. A quirky detail often mentioned in studies of ancient cognition is that humans tend to perceive patterns even in randomness, a trait sometimes called patternicity. While this can lead to errors, it also allows for rapid learning in uncertain environments. Seeing meaning where none exists can be costly, but missing a real pattern can be fatal. You lie back slightly, still within the circle of firelight. The ground beneath you is cool, firm, real. The sky above feels endless. Between them, you exist. The toolmaker continues their work, now slower. As if the stone has reached a satisfactory form, it is placed near others, each one slightly different, each one carrying the memory of effort. Someone nearby shifts position, pulling a hide closer. Another murmurs softly in sleep. A child turns and settles again without waking. The night is not silent, but it is stable, and stability is what allows rest to happen. You begin to notice something subtle about your own attention. It no longer scans constantly. It does not jump at every sound. Instead, it flows gently between awareness and rest, like a tide that never fully stops but changes depth. This balance between alertness and relaxation may have been one of the most important survival adaptations in early humans. Too much vigilance would prevent rest. Too little would increase risk. The ability to modulate attention likely improved group survival over time. You feel that modulation now, the fire softens. Your breathing slows slightly. The world narrows to a small circle of warmth surrounded by vast calm darkness. And within that circle, the ancient instinct remains present, not as fear, not as thought, but as quiet awareness that everything here depends on balance, light and dark, rest and attention, self and group. The stone tools rest beside the fire, the people rest around it, and the night continues, steady and wide, holding everything gently in place. The night has settled into its deepest rhythm now, the kind of stillness that feels almost complete, as if the world has paused just long enough for thought to become softer. The fire remains steady in the center of the camp, lower than before, but persistent. Its glow moves across sleeping bodies, resting tools, and the faint outlines of shared space. You notice children more clearly in this quieter moment. They are not separated from the group in any formal way. There are no designated beds, no walls, no doors. Instead, they are woven into the circle itself, tucked between adults, pressed gently into warmth, as if belonging is something physically arranged. In early human societies, childhood was not extended in the way it often is today. Survival demanded that learning happened quickly and continuously. Children observed adult behavior closely, gradually adopting skills through imitation long before formal instruction existed. You watch a young child shift slightly in sleep, responding unconsciously to the movement of someone nearby, even in rest. The group is interconnected. A faint breeze passes through the grass beyond the firelight, carrying the smell of earth and smoke. The sound of insects has softened, replaced by occasional distant calls that feel less like warnings and more like background conversation from another world. You begin to notice how much of survival here depends on learning without being told. A mainstream fact in developmental anthropology is that imitation plays a critical role in human learning, especially in early childhood. Humans are unusually skilled at copying gestures, sequences, and social behaviours compared to many other species, which strengthens cultural transmission across generations. A child near the fire watches an adult adjust a stone tool. The movement is simple. Turn the wrist, apply pressure, pause. The child mirrors it, not perfectly, but meaningfully. No correction is needed. The learning is absorbed into memory quietly, like water into dry soil. A lesser-known detail from research on early learning suggests that humans are especially sensitive to intentional actions. We are more likely to copy behaviours we interpret as purposeful rather than accidental ones. This sensitivity likely helped early humans distinguish useful knowledge from random movement in complex environments. You see that principle unfolding here without words. Everything meaningful is noticed. Everything repeated becomes instruction. The fire shifts as a small log collapses inward. A soft cascade of sparks rises briefly and fades. The glow changes shape across faces, creating slow-moving shadows that seem almost like they are breathing. Some members of the group are asleep now. Others remain lightly awake. A few continue quiet tasks, such as adjusting materials or tending the fire. The division is fluid, not fixed. You realize there is no strict separation between activity and rest in this world. Life flows in gradients. Attention rises and falls rather than switching on and off. A quirky detail often discussed in sleep research among modern foraging societies is that nighttime wakefulness is sometimes shared among group members, with individuals naturally taking turns being more alert. This pattern reduces risk while allowing most people to rest deeply at different intervals. You sense something like that here. A person near the edge of the circle sits with eyes open, scanning slowly but calmly. Another shifts position and drifts into deeper sleep. Another adjusts the fire without fully waking. Responsibility is distributed through awareness rather than assigned roles. You lie back slightly, watching the sky through gaps between bodies and branches. The stars are brighter now. Without artificial light, they feel closer, though still unreachable. The sky is not empty. It is full, layered, almost heavy with presence. The Milky Way arcs overhead like a pale, silent river. In many early human cultures, celestial observation likely developed as part of practical survival. Seasonal changes in star positions would have helped track migration routes, rainfall cycles, and time for resource gathering. Some researchers argue that even before structured astronomy, humans developed intuitive relationships with the night sky. Others suggest that early sky observation was primarily symbolic or spiritual in nature. The truth may sit somewhere between. Practical use and meaning often grow together. A soft murmur passes through the group, not a conversation, more like a shared sound of reassurance. Someone shifts closer to the fire. The warmth remains steady, but the night outside, it feels vast and indifferent. That contrast is always present here. Safety exists only within maintained attention. You notice how the human mind responds to this environment. It does not fully relax. It does not fully tense. Instead, it holds both states at once. This dual awareness is one of the quiet survival strengths of early humans. The ability to rest while remaining partially aware of surroundings allows recovery without complete vulnerability. Researchers continue to explore how ancient sleep patterns may have differed from modern ones. Some propose that segmented sleep, with natural awakenings during the night, may have been common in pre-industrial societies. Others suggest variability depending on environment, climate, and social structure. No single model fits all contexts. Human adaptability resists simplicity. A faint sound comes from the grass beyond the firelight. A pause follows. No reaction this time. The group has already interpreted it as harmless. Experience filters meaning faster than conscious thought. You feel that filtering process within yourself too. What once might have felt uncertain now registers as ordinary. The brain learns the difference between threat and background, gradually reducing unnecessary alertness. This learning is invisible, but constant. The fire lowers slightly again. A new piece of wood is not added immediately. The flame continues on its own for a moment, flickering gently, as if testing whether it can sustain itself. It can, for now. You feel the temperature drop subtly across your skin. The air becomes cooler, softer, more still. Someone pulls a hide closer. Another shifts to remain within the warmest part of the circle. The group adjust without discussion. Everything is response, everything is awareness. And beneath it all, a deeper instinct continues to operate quietly, the one that brought humans through countless generations of uncertainty. Stay close, stay aware, stay together. The night continues without urgency, and in that continuity, survival becomes something almost gentle, not a struggle, but a rhythm. The night has not fully released its hold, but the first hint of change arrives quietly, like a thought forming before language. The fire behind you is no longer visible, yet its presence remains in memory, like warmth still resting on the skin. You're moving now across familiar land, guided not by roads or markers, but by something older, memory. The ground underfoot is uneven but known. Dry grass bends softly with each step. Small stones shift slightly, pressing into the soles of your feet. The air is cool, carrying faint traces of smoke that drift from the distant camp like an invisible thread connecting you back to safety. In early human survival, navigation was not a separate skill. It was woven into daily perception. Humans learned to remember landscapes through landmarks, scents, sounds, and seasonal changes. This form of environmental memory allowed groups to return to reliable water sources, shelter areas, and food locations across vast and shifting terrain. You walk slowly, not because the path is difficult, but because attention is doing most of the work. Every detail matters: a twisted tree ahead, a patch of lighter soil, a cluster of stones that look slightly out of place. These are not random features. They are part of a mental map built over time, reinforced through repetition and shared experience. The world here is not labelled, it is remembered. A faint wind moves across the grassland, brushing against your face. It carries the scent of dry vegetation and distant earth. Somewhere far away, a small animal moves through brush, but it is not close enough to demand attention. You continue. A mainstream finding in cognitive anthropology is that spatial memory in early humans was strongly developed, enabling navigation across large and complex environments without written maps. This ability likely depended on integrating sensory input with long-term memory, creating what researchers sometimes describe as cognitive landscapes. You notice how direction is not thought about directly. It is felt. The slope of the ground changes slightly, and your body adjusts without instruction. The position of the wind shifts, and you unconsciously angle your path. The rising light in the sky suggests morning is still strengthening, giving a sense of orientation without needing explicit measurement. There are no clocks here. Time is read through light and shadow. You pass a narrow stretch of land where the grass grows taller and denser. It brushes against your legs, leaving faint traces of movement. In places like this, sound changes, footsteps soften, insects behave differently, even silence feels layered. You pause briefly. Something feels familiar, not a threat, not uncertainty, recognition. A bend in the land, a small depression where rain collects during certain seasons. You have seen this before, though not in isolation. It exists within a network of remembered places. This is how early navigation worked, not point to point, but web to web. Each remembered place connected to others, forming pathways that were not drawn but lived. A lesser-known detail from experimental studies of navigation is that even modern humans, when placed in unfamiliar natural environments, often begin to rely on landmark-based memory and sensory cues rather than abstract directional thinking. This suggests that older systems of spatial awareness remain deeply embedded beneath modern tools. You continue walking. The land gently rises. From here, you can see farther. The grass stretches outward in soft waves, and distant trees form dark silhouettes against the brightening sky. The world feels larger from this height, but also more readable. There is comfort in recognition, not certainty, but familiarity, somewhere along the path. You notice small signs left unintentionally, broken stems, flattened grass, a faint impression where someone previously stepped. These traces are not deliberate markers, yet they guide movement all the same. You follow them without conscious decision. Researchers continue to debate how much early human navigation depended on individual memory versus collective knowledge shared through teaching and repetition. Some argue that skilled navigators developed highly personalized mental maps, while others emphasize the importance of group knowledge passed down through observation and shared journeys. Both perspectives may reflect different moments in the same process. You reach a stretch where the wind becomes slightly stronger. It moves across open ground with a steady, cooling presence. The sound of insects shifts. The environment feels more open, less enclosed by vegetation. You're approaching something known, not yet visible, but present in memory, a river bend or a resting place, or perhaps simply a point where others will gather again, in the ancient mind. Returning was not passive. It required active memory reconstruction. Each step involved comparing present sensations with stored impressions. The shape of a hill, the angle of a tree branch, the texture of soil underfoot, all of it combined into a continuous act of orientation. You begin to feel the shape of the path in your mind even before fully seeing it. A quirky detail often mentioned in studies of spatial cognition is that humans frequently use what researchers call path integration, combining internal cues such as movement and direction with external landmarks to maintain orientation even when visual cues are limited. This system can remain surprisingly accurate over moderate distances. You notice this now in your own movement. Even when you're not actively thinking, you are still arriving. The land becomes more familiar with each step. A cluster of stones appears ahead. Partially buried in soil, they form a shape that feels meaningful, though not intentionally constructed. Nearby grass bends in a pattern that suggests repeated passage. You slow slightly. This is close. The memory of place strengthens. Smell shifts subtly. Smoke becomes more distinct again. Not from imagination, from proximity. You can almost feel the camp before seeing it, as if it exists first as sensation rather than sight. A mainstream observation in anthropology is that early humans likely relied heavily on olfactory cues for navigation and recognition of familiar sights. Smell, being closely linked to memory, would have provided a strong and immediate sense of place, especially in environments where visual landmarks with similar or seasonal changes altered the landscape. The scent of ashen wood becomes clearer. You step forward. Between the grass and low branches, the faint glow of fire reappears, small at first, then steady. The camp is there, not distant anymore, not remembered, present. People move within it slowly. Some are awake, some rest, some shift position near the warmth. The structure of safety returns to physical form. You feel a subtle release in your body. Though no one announces arrival, there is no ceremony for returning, no signal of completion, just the quiet recognition that movement has ended. For now, you rejoin the circle. The fire continues its steady rhythm, light, warmth, and shared presence gather around you again, and something in the mind settles, as if a thread that was stretched across distance has returned to its anchor. You understand now that survival is not only about moving forward, it is also about finding your way back to warmth, back to others, back to places the mind remembers even when the body's far away. And as the firelight surrounds you once more, the ancient instinct of memory rests quietly beside awareness, guiding you without words. The camp has fully reformed around you now, the fire rebuilt into a steady centre of light and warmth. Night is no longer new, nor is it surprising. It is familiar again, almost comforting in its predictability. The grass beyond the circle sways gently in the dark wind, and the sky above holds its vast, patient silence. But something changes in how the group uses this time, now that the immediate tasks of gathering and returning have passed. Attention turns inward, not inward in isolation, but inward as a shared space. People sit closer, voices lower, movements slow further. The world outside the fire becomes less relevant, not ignored, but temporarily set aside. And into this space comes something uniquely human: story. In early human communities, storytelling likely served as one of the most important tools for transferring knowledge across generations. Long before writing systems existed, spoken narratives carried information about survival, social bonds, and environmental patterns. You sit among them as the voice begins again, not loud, not dramatic, but steady, rhythmic, almost like the fire itself speaking through a human form. The storyteller gestures toward the darkness beyond the camp, then toward the ground, then toward the fire. Each motion carries meaning, though not in a literal sense that can be translated word for word. It is more like a shared understanding built over time. You begin to notice how stories here are not separate from reality. They're embedded within it. A fire is not just fire, it is warmth, danger, gathering, memory. A path is not just a path. It is return, risk, familiarity, change. A mainstream finding in anthropology suggests that narrative thinking may have evolved as a cognitive tool for organizing complex information into sequences that are easier to remember and transmit. By turning events into structured stories, early humans could share survival lessons more effectively than through isolated facts. The storyteller pauses. The group remains still. Even the fire seems quieter for a moment. Then the voice continues. You cannot fully understand the language, but you can feel the structure. There is repetition. There is rhythm. There is emphasis on certain gestures that seem to anchor meaning. A lesser-known detail from studies of oral traditions is that repetition in storytelling often serves as a memory scaffold, helping listeners retain important information even in environments with distractions or limited attention spans. This technique appears across many cultures and time periods, suggesting deep cognitive roots. You realize that attention here is being guided, not forced. It moves like water through channels. When the storyteller shifts tone slightly, the group leans in without conscious instruction. When a gesture slows, breathing in the circle seems to slow with it. This is shared cognition in motion, not one mind. Many minds align temporarily around a single thread. The fire crackles softly. A small spark lifts and disappears. Somewhere in the story, there is mention of movement, of travel, of places beyond the immediate land, of animals and weather and decisions made in response to both. You begin to sense how stories may have functioned as mental simulations, not direct experiences, but rehearsals of possible events. What happens if the herd moves early? What happens if rain arrives late? What happens if one path is blocked? Researchers continue to explore how early narrative structures influenced human planning ability. Some propose that storytelling and foresight developed together, each reinforcing the other. Others suggest that narrative thinking emerged primarily from social bonding needs, with practical benefits following later. The truth may not sit neatly in one explanation, it may lie in overlap. You shift slightly, feeling the warmth of the fire on one side and the coolness of night on the other. The contrast feels almost symbolic, though no one here would describe it that way. Symbols, as we understand them, may not yet exist in full form, but their foundations are forming. A quirky detail from cognitive archaeology is that early symbolic behavior often appears alongside shared attention rituals, such as group focus around objects, fire, or repeated actions. These shared moments may have helped stabilize meaning before formal language systems fully developed. You watch as the storyteller briefly holds up a stone. It is not explained. It does not need to be. Everyone seems to understand its role in the narrative moment. Then it is set down again near the firelight. Silence follows for a few breaths. Then the story continues. Night deepens around the circle, but it does not feel heavy. Instead, it feels contained, as if the fire defines a boundary between the known and unknown. Outside that boundary is uncertainty. Inside it is shared understanding. You notice how fear behaves differently in this environment compared to earlier solitude. It is still present, but less sharp, less fragmented. It is absorbed into collective attention rather than experienced alone. A mainstream observation in social psychology is that shared attention and group cohesion can reduce perceived threat levels, as individuals rely on collective cues rather than isolated interpretation. In early human groups, this likely contributed to both survival and emotional stability during vulnerable nighttime periods. You feel that effect directly now, not as theory, as atmosphere. The storyteller's voice lowers again, and the group becomes even quieter. Some people rest their heads against others. Some close their eyes but remain present. Some simply watch the fire. There is no strict separation between listening and resting. Both exist together. The story moves toward conclusion without urgency. It does not rush. It does not end abruptly. It fades gradually, like light diminishing at sunset, and in that fading, something important remains: connection, not only to the speaker, but to each other. You realize that survival here is not only about food, tools, or awareness of danger. It is also about shared meaning. Without it, the world would remain a collection of signals. With it, the world becomes understandable. As the storyteller finishes, silence returns to the circle, but it is not empty silence. It is full of shared presence. The fire continues to burn steadily, and the night, once again, holds everyone gently in place. The fire has settled into a steady glow again, and the storyteller's voice has fully faded into the night. What remains is a deep, shared quiet, the kind that does not feel empty but full, as if the air itself remembers what was just spoken, around you. The group shifts subtly into a different rhythm. This is the time when awareness expands outward again, not sharply, but in a slow, natural return to scanning the world beyond the firelight. Story has gathered the mind inward. Now attention gently unfolds back into the landscape. The grass beyond the circle moves in soft waves under the night wind. Insects continue their layered chorus. Somewhere far away, an animal calls once, then stops. The sound does not approach, it simply exists, like a reminder that the world outside the camp continues its own patterns. In early human groups, this balance between focused attention and environmental awareness was essential. Social bonding activities such as storytelling or shared rest helped unify the group, while periods of quiet vigilance ensured continued safety. You notice how people position themselves almost instinctively. Some face outward toward the dark, some remain closer to the center. Some alternate between watching and resting, There is no instruction for this, it simply happens. A mainstream finding in behavioral anthropology is that many hunter-gatherer societies exhibit flexible role distribution during nighttime hours, where vigilance is shared informally rather than assigned. Individuals naturally adjust their level of alertness based on fatigue, environment, and social context. You feel this flexibility in the way attention moves around you. No one is fully responsible for everything, yet everything is quietly observed. A faint shift in the grass draws brief attention from several people at once. Not alarm, not tension, just acknowledgement. The sound resolves into wind moving through vegetation, and the group returns to its calm state. This kind of rapid evaluation is constant, it is not stressful, it is efficient. A lesser-known detail from studies of perceptual adaptation is that humans can quickly learn to distinguish between meaningful and meaningless environmental cues in natural settings, reducing cognitive load over time. This allows attention to remain available without becoming overwhelmed by constant monitoring. You realize that the mind here is not trying to eliminate uncertainty, it is learning to live with it. The fire pops softly, sending a brief scatter of sparks upward. They rise, glow for a moment, and disappear into the darkness above. Someone nearby adjusts their posture, shifting weight to remain comfortable while still partially alert. The group is now in a liminal state, not fully active, not fully asleep, a space between. You begin to notice how important this in-between state is to survival. It allows rest without vulnerability, awareness without exhaustion. It is a form of living that does not exist in extremes. Researchers continue to explore whether early human cognition evolved to support such flexible states of attention. Some suggest that the ability to transition smoothly between alertness and rest was crucial in environments where threats could appear unpredictably. Others argue that social structure played an even larger role in maintaining group safety during these periods. Both ideas seem visible here in practice. You look around the circle again. A child sleeps deeply, unaffected by the surrounding vigilance. An adult nearby watches quietly, eyes open but relaxed. Another shifts slightly and then becomes still again, as if drifting just below the surface of wakefulness. The system is fluid. It does not break. It adjusts. A quirky detail often noted in sleep research among traditional communities is that full simultaneous deep sleep across all group members is relatively rare in environments without artificial protection. Instead, micropatterns of wakefulness and light sleep tend to overlap, creating a kind of shared awareness even during rest. You can almost feel that overlapping awareness now, like layers of attention stacked gently on top of one another. The night feels less like absence and more like shared experience. Beyond the firelight, movement appears briefly at the edge of vision. A small animal, perhaps, or simply shifting grass catching moonlight. No one reacts strongly. The moment is registered and released. This ability to let go of non-threats quickly is as important as detecting threats themselves. Energy must be conserved. Attention must be balanced. The fire continues its steady presence, anchoring everything within its small circle of warmth. Shadows move slowly across faces and ground, shaped by flame rather than wind. You begin to understand how survival here depends not on constant action, but on calibrated awareness, knowing when to watch closely, knowing when to rest, knowing when to trust the group. A mainstream observation in ecological psychology is that human perception is deeply shaped by environment, meaning that attention and awareness adapt to the demands of the surrounding landscape. In open environments, vigilance becomes broader. In sheltered environments, attention becomes more focused and inward. Here, in open grassland under night sky, awareness expands naturally, but it does not scatter. It is held together by the fire. You lean slightly closer to its warmth. The heat touches your skin in a steady, grounding way. The scent of smoke is faint but persistent, blending with earth and plant matter carried in from the day. Somewhere in the group, a soft murmur rises and fades again, not forming into speech. It is almost like the camp reminding itself that it is still here, still together. Time passes without markers. There are no hours, no numbers, only changes in light, sound, and temperature. The stars shift slowly overhead, though their movement is too subtle to notice in a single moment. Yet over time, everything changes, and the group changes with it. You feel yourself becoming part of that rhythm, not separate from it, not observing it from outside, but included within its flow of attention, rest, and awareness. The ancient survival instinct is no longer something you are watching. It is something you are participating in, a quiet system of being alive together in a world that never fully stops being unknown. The fire continues to burn, the night continues to breathe, and the circle remains whole. The night deepens again, but something subtle begins to shift within the camp, as if attention itself is slowly changing direction. The fire remains steady, yet the group is no longer focused only on its warmth or the familiar safety of its circle. There is a sense, quiet and unspoken, that something more distant is being considered, not danger exactly, not curiosity alone either. Something in between. You notice it first in the way people begin to look outward more often, past the firelight and into the surrounding darkness where shapes are less certain and meaning is harder to hold. The grass beyond the circle moves gently, and the wind carries faint, shifting sounds that seem to invite interpretation. In early human life, this moment of awareness toward the unfamiliar was constant. The world was never fully known, and every boundary between safe space and unknown space required attention. You're not alone in this feeling. The group seems to share it. A mainstream fact from paleoanthropology is that early Homo sapiens and related hominin groups often shared landscapes with other human species, including Neanderthals in certain regions of Eurasia. These encounters were not constant everywhere, but where they occurred, they added complexity to social and environmental awareness. Here, in this imagined landscape, that possibility sits quietly in the background of perception. Another group, another presence, not seen, but imaginable. You watch as someone near the edge of the fire circle stands slowly. Their movement is not urgent, but it changes the atmosphere slightly. Others glance in their direction, then toward the dark beyond. A shift in attention spreads through the group, still calm, still controlled, but more outward facing now. A lesser-known detail from archaeological interpretation is that evidence of interaction between early human groups sometimes appears indirectly, through shared tool styles or overlapping material patterns in regions where different populations may have met or passed through each other over time. These traces suggest that contact, whether frequent or rare, may have influenced behavior even without direct observation in every location. You begin to sense how the mind responds to the idea of otherness, not hostility, not certainty, awareness. The fire pops softly again, and a brief wave of light moves across faces in that moment. Expressions are easier to read, eyes reflect flame, postures are slightly more upright, even rest seems less deep for a few individuals. The unknown is not present, but it is felt. That is enough. You look toward the grassland beyond the camp. Nothing moves clearly, yet the darkness feels populated by possibility. Researchers continue to debate how early humans distinguish between imagined threat and real threat in environments where uncertainty was constant. Some suggest that rapid threat detection systems may have sometimes overestimated danger as a protective bias. Others propose that social learning helped refine these responses over time. reducing unnecessary alarm through shared experience. Both ideas feel present here. One part of the mind leans toward caution, another part waits for confirmation. The group does not react dramatically. Instead, it adjusts subtly. People sit slightly closer together. Lines of sight become more outward-oriented. Conversation, if it can be called that now, becomes quieter and more minimal. Even silence changes shape. A quirky detail sometimes noted in behavioral studies of small-scale societies is that group spacing often shifts unconsciously in response to environmental uncertainty, with individuals moving closer together without explicit coordination. This spatial tightening can increase feelings of safety while also improving collective awareness. You see that happening now. The fire remains the anchor, but the circle around it becomes denser. Not closed, just gathered. A soft sound emerges from beyond the immediate light. It is not strong, not clearly identifiable. It could be wind. It could be movement. It could be nothing at all. No one reacts immediately. Then a brief pause follows. Attention rises collectively. Still no alarm, only evaluation. The sound fades, and the group relaxes slightly again. This rhythm of attention, rising and falling, becomes almost familiar as you observe it. It is not panic, it is calibration. The mind adjusting to uncertainty without being overwhelmed by it. You begin to understand that survival here depends not only on detecting threats, but on not overreacting to them. Energy is precious, attention is finite, both must be managed carefully. The firelight continues to move gently across the camp, revealing resting bodies, half-closed eyes, and quiet gestures. Even those who are more alert do not appear tense. Their awareness is active, but not strained. It is a kind of practiced balance. A mainstream observation in evolutionary psychology is that humans likely developed highly sensitive social monitoring systems, allowing them to detect subtle cues in group behavior that indicate safety or danger. This sensitivity would have been especially important in environments where survival depended on coordinated group responses rather than individual action. You can feel that sensitivity now, not as theory, but as shared presence. If one person shifts slightly, others notice. If attention rises, it spreads. If calm returns, it settles together. The group is not controlled, it is synchronized. The night remains open and vast beyond the fire, but within the circle, meaning is constantly being negotiated through small signals, glances, and shared stillness. You realize that what you're witnessing is not just survival behavior, it is the early architecture of social awareness, the foundation of how humans learn to exist together in uncertain environments. As time passes, the initial uncertainty fades slowly into background awareness. The unknown does not disappear, but it recedes slightly, no longer pressing directly against attention. The fire steadies, the group relaxes again, but something important remains, a heightened sense of connection, not fear, not comfort alone. Awareness shared across many minds, held gently within a small circle of light, and the night continues, carrying that awareness forward into silence. The night has softened again, settling back into its quieter rhythm after the brief moment of collective alertness. The fire is steady, its light low and warm, casting long, gentle shadows that move slowly across the ground like thoughts drifting in and out of focus. The group has returned to a calmer state. Though not quite the same as before, awareness remains slightly elevated, like a distant echo that has not fully faded. People are still close together, still oriented outward, still quietly attentive to the land beyond the circle, and yet life continues. That is what always happens here. Even uncertainty does not stop existence, it only reshapes it. You notice someone near the edge of the fire circle leaning forward slightly, inspecting the ground. Their hand moves slowly across the soil, brushing aside ash and dust. Something small is being uncovered. Something that seems to draw attention without immediately explaining why. In early human communities, small physical objects often carried meaning beyond their material form. Stones, bones, pigments, and shaped materials could serve practical purposes, but also social or symbolic ones depending on context and use. The object in the person's hand is coated in a faint reddish colour, not bright, not polished, just a soft, earthy pigment, red ochre. You watch as it is turned slowly in the firelight. The surface catches glow and loses it again. No one speaks immediately. Attention gathers around the object in a quiet, contained way. A mainstream fact from archaeology is that red ochre use appears at multiple early Homo sapiens sites dating back tens of thousands of years or more, suggesting that pigment use was widespread and possibly significant in social or symbolic behaviour. Its exact meaning remains uncertain, but its repeated presence across different regions indicates it was more than accidental. You feel the shift in atmosphere as the object is passed gently between hands. Not urgency, not fear. Something more reflective. A lesser-known detail from archaeological interpretation is that ochre may have been used for a variety of purposes, including body decoration, hide preservation, adhesive preparation, or marking objects. Its versatility makes it difficult to assign a single function, which adds to its mystery in the archaeological record. Here, in this moment, its purpose is not explained, it is observed. Someone rubs a small amount between their fingers. The colour stains lightly against skin. The gesture is slow, almost thoughtful, as if testing texture, weight, and meaning all at once. You notice how attention in the group shifts from outward vigilance to inward contemplation. The same people who were scanning the dark moments earlier now focus closely on a small object in the firelight. This transition is not random. It reflects a deeper human pattern. Attention is not fixed in one mode. It moves between survival awareness and meaning-making. Researchers continue to explore how early symbolic behaviour may have developed alongside practical survival skills. Some suggest that symbolic thought emerged as a way to reinforce social identity and cohesion. Others argue it may have developed through repeated practical use of materials that gradually gained shared meaning within groups. Both interpretations may overlap in practice. You watch as the ochre is placed near the fire, not thrown, not discarded, but set down with a kind of quiet care. It remains within the circle of light, visible, present, held in shared attention. The fire flickers, and the red pigment seems to deepen in colour for a moment before fading back into shadow. Around you, people settle again into stillness. Some lean back, some rest their hands on the ground, some continue watching the fire, but less intensely than before. The earlier alertness has transformed. Not erased, transformed. A quirky detail sometimes mentioned in studies of early pigment use is that ochre has been found in contexts that suggest repeated handling and transport over distances, implying it may have held value beyond immediate practical application. Its presence in multiple sites and layers indicates continuity of use across time. You think about that continuity, not just objects passing through hands, but meaning passing through generations. The fire shifts again, a small log collapsing inward with a soft glow of sparks. The night outside remains vast and unknown, but inside the circle, attention feels more anchored than before, not because danger has disappeared, but because meaning has been added. You realize that this is another layer of the survival instinct. Beyond fear, beyond hunger, beyond memory, there is interpretation, the ability to assign significance to the world. A mainstream observation in cognitive archaeology is that symbolic behaviour, whether through pigments, objects, or repeated gestures, may have contributed to strengthening group identity, helping early humans distinguish between shared us and unknown others. This distinction could support cooperation within groups while maintaining flexibility in unfamiliar environments. You look again at the ochre near the fire. It's small, simple, yet it holds attention in a way that feels disproportionate to its size, as if the mind is practicing something important by focusing on it. Outside the firelight, the grassland remains dark and unreadable, but within the circle, meaning gathers again, slowly rebuilding after the earlier uncertainty. The group is quieter now, but not tense, more reflective, more connected. You begin to sense how early human life may have been shaped not only by reacting to the environment, but by interpreting it. Not only by surviving events, but by assigning meaning to objects, colours, and shared experiences. The red pigment remains still, the fire continues to breathe, and the night holds everything gently in place once again, as if the world is allowing the group a moment to simply understand, not just endure. The fire softened again into a steady, low pulse of light, and the red ochre rests quietly near its edge, no longer being passed from hand to hand, but still holding attention in a subtle, lingering way. The night feels deeper now, not in danger, but in presence, as if the world has grown larger while the circle of safety remains small and intact. A cool wind moves through the grassland beyond the camp. It brushes across skin, carrying with it the scent of dry vegetation, distant earth, and faint traces of smoke. The temperature has dropped slightly, reminding everybody here that warmth is not permanent unless it is maintained. In early human life, environmental change was not abstract. It was immediate and physical. Temperature shifts, wind direction, and seasonal cycles directly shaped movement, shelter, and survival strategies. You adjust your position closer to the fire without thinking. Others do the same in small, nearly invisible steps. No one instructs this. The body already knows. A mainstream fact from paleoenvironmental studies is that early Homo sapiens lived through fluctuating climates that required constant adaptation. These changes influenced migration patterns, resource availability, and even social organization, encouraging flexibility in behavior and decision-making. You notice how the group responds to the cooling air, not with speech, with movement. A subtle tightening of the circle occurs again, not from fear this time, but from comfort-seeking. The fire becomes more central in awareness, not because of threat, but because of warmth. A lesser-known detail from studies of ancient shelter use is that early humans often adapted natural formations such as caves, rock overhangs, and wind-sheltered valleys rather than constructing permanent dwellings. These spaces were chosen for their ability to reduce exposure to wind and temperature extremes while maintaining access to resources. Here, in this open grassland, the fire is the primary shelter, not a structure of stone or wood, but a shared center of heat. You watch as someone carefully adjusts a hide over their shoulders. The material is rough, shaped by use, softened by time. It carries faint traces of animal life, earth, and smoke. It is not only protection, it is memory of effort, skill, and survival. The group remains mostly quiet, but it is not silent in the empty sense. It is full of small, almost imperceptible activity. Breathing, shifting, listening, occasional soft sounds of firewood settling, a brief crackle as heat moves through wood fibers. In this environment, even stillness has texture. You begin to notice how deeply the body responds to warmth. Muscles relax slightly, breathing slows, attention softens at the edges while remaining present at the center. It is a dual state, both alert and restful. Researchers continue to explore how early human thermoregulation and social behavior may have been linked. Some suggest that shared fire use not only provided protection from cold and predators, but also extended social interaction into nighttime hours, strengthening bonds and enabling communication beyond daylight limitations. Others argue that fire may have influenced sleep patterns themselves, gradually shifting human rest cycles and increasing opportunities for shared vigilance and storytelling. Both perspectives point toward the same truth. Fire did more than warm the body. It shaped behavior. You look again at the red ochre. Its color seems deeper now in the firelight, almost like it has absorbed warmth itself. Someone near it traces a finger through a small smear left earlier, studying the texture. The gesture is slow, thoughtful, almost reflective. A quirky detail often mentioned in discussions of early pigment use is that ochre can remain visible for long periods when applied to surfaces, especially in dry environments, which may have contributed to its repeated use in marking objects, bodies, or spaces. Its durability could have made it valuable for communication or identity marking across time. You begin to see how objects here do not stay neutral. They accumulate meaning through repetition, through attention, through shared observation. The fire shifts again, lowering slightly before rising as a new piece of wood catches. Sparks lift briefly and vanish into the dark sky above. The stars remain steady, unchanged, distant but constant, as if observing without involvement. The group's attention is now gentler than before. The earlier alertness has fully settled into calm awareness. There is no scanning urgency, only quiet presence. You feel this shift in yourself as well. The mind is no longer actively searching for threats. It is simply observing what is. A mainstream observation in environmental psychology is that humans tend to enter different cognitive states, depending on environmental stability. In predictable and safe conditions, attention becomes more diffuse and reflective, while in uncertain conditions it becomes narrow and focused. Early human survival likely depended on the ability to move fluidly between these modes. You're now in the reflective state. Time feels less segmented. Moments blend into one another without sharp boundaries. The fire, the grass, the wind, the group, all existing in a single, continuous awareness, somewhere in the circle. A soft murmur of sound rises briefly, then fades. Not a conversation, more like a shared acknowledgement of presence. The body of the group seems to settle deeper into the ground, as if the earth itself is supporting rest. And yet, even in this softness, awareness remains, not vigilance, not tension, but openness, the kind that allows life to continue without interruption, while still acknowledging the unpredictable nature of the world beyond the firelight. You understand now how survival here is not a single state. It is a balance of many states held at once, warmth and coolness, rest and awareness, memory and interpretation, individual sensation and collective presence. The fire continues its quiet rhythm, and the night continues its slow passage, carrying everything gently forward without urgency. The night has settled into a long, steady calm, the kind that feels almost continuous, as if time itself has loosened its edges. The fire remains at the center of the camp, smaller now, but persistent. Its light moves gently across the ground, across resting bodies, across the faint outlines of objects that no longer need to be named in order to be understood. The red ochre is still there, dimmed by shadow but not forgotten, and something about it continues to shape attention, even in silence. You notice how the group has changed again, not in structure, but tone. Earlier, there was alertness, then reflection. Now there is something more diffuse, almost instinctual, as if the mind is no longer focused on any single thing but is instead spread across the environment like a soft net. In early human survival contexts, this kind of distributed awareness would have been essential during long nights, allowing individuals to rest while still maintaining a general sensitivity to changes in sound, movement, or temperature. You lie slightly closer to the fire, feeling its warmth shift across your skin in uneven patterns. Heat is not constant here. It pulses, fades, and returns depending on wind and fuel. Even comfort requires attention to maintain. A cool draft passes over the grassland beyond the circle. It does not bring urgency with it, only reminder. The world outside remains active, even if unseen. A mainstream fact from paleoecology is that early Homo sapiens experienced environments where resource distribution was highly seasonal and spatially uneven, requiring constant adaptation in movement, diet, and social organization. This variability likely reinforced both cooperation and flexible decision-making within groups. You feel that flexibility now in the way people rest. Some are fully asleep, others are half awake, others shift between the two states without clear boundaries. There is no strict separation between roles. Awareness itself is shared, not assigned. A lesser-known detail from ethnographic studies of modern foraging communities suggests that nighttime rest is often punctuated by brief awakenings, quiet adjustments, and shifts in position, creating a layered pattern of sleep rather than a single uninterrupted block. This pattern may reflect ancient sleep strategies shaped by environmental uncertainty. You begin to notice how sound defines this stage of the night. Not loud sounds, small ones, a breath-changing rhythm, a piece of wood settling in ash, a distant rustle that may or may not be meaningful. Each sound enters awareness, is briefly held, and then released. The mind does not cling to it. It evaluates and lets go. The fire emits a soft, steady crackle. Occasionally, a spark rises and fades. The glow is low enough now that faces appear partially hidden, emerging only when flame shifts. There is something almost dreamlike about this state, even though you are awake, or partly awake. The boundary is unclear. You realize that perception itself has become less rigid. Attention flows rather than focuses. It moves between body, fire, grass, and sky without fixed direction. This may be one of the oldest forms of human nighttime cognition, not deep sleep, not full vigilance, but a layered awareness that allows survival without exhaustion. Researchers continue to explore how early human sleep architecture may have been shaped by environmental pressures. Some suggest that lighter, more flexible sleep patterns allowed groups to maintain partial awareness across the night. Others propose that social sleeping arrangements reduced individual risk by distributing awareness across multiple people simultaneously. These interpretations highlight different aspects of the same lived experience. Here, both feel present. You notice a subtle shift in the group when a small animal sound passes beyond the firelight. It is brief, barely noticeable, and yet it creates a momentary pause in collective awareness. No one reacts strongly. The sound fades, and the group returns to stillness. This pattern repeats in many forms through the night. Small stimuli arise, attention briefly gathers, then it dissolves again into calm. It is not anxiety, it is calibration. A quirky detail often discussed in studies of perception is that the human brain is especially tuned to changes in pattern rather than constant input. Sudden shifts in sound, light, or movement are more likely to trigger awareness than steady background noise, which becomes gradually filtered out over time. You can feel that mechanism operating gently here. The fire is constant, the wind changes. Attention follows the change, then returns. The red ochre is now barely visible, partially absorbed into shadow and ashlight. Yet its presence still seems to anchor attention whenever it catches a brief flicker of flame. It is not important in a practical sense at this moment, but it is not meaningless either. Meaning here is not fixed, it is responsive, shaped by context and shared attention. You begin to sense how early human cognition may have developed not as a single system, but as overlapping layers of awareness, memory, and interpretation that work together in shifting environments. A mainstream observation in cognitive evolution studies is that human adaptability is closely linked to the brain's capacity for flexible attention, allowing individuals to switch between focused tasks and broad environmental monitoring depending on context. This flexibility would have been especially valuable in unpredictable ecosystems. You feel that flexibility now in your own awareness. It does not stay in one place, it drifts. The fire, the sky, the ground, the group, everything is part of a continuous field of perception. Somewhere in the circle, someone turns slightly in sleep. Another adjusts their position closer to warmth. Another remains still, eyes open but unfocused, watching without intention. The night continues without interruption. No single moment defines it. It is made of transitions, and in those transitions, survival quietly persists. You realize that nothing here is fully separate. Not rest from awareness, not fear from calm, not individual from group. Everything overlaps, gently layered, held together by shared presence and the small, steady fire at the center of it all. The night has reached its deepest stillness, the point where even the wind seems to slow, as if it is careful not to disturb what has settled into place. The fire is now low, a concentrated glow of embers rather than flame. Yet it continues to breathe faint warmth into the circle of resting bodies. Everything feels quieter, but not empty. Instead, the world feels layered. You notice how sound has changed. It is no longer made of distinct events, but of textures. A soft rustle here, a distant shift there, the occasional breath of someone sleeping nearby. Even silence seems to have weight, like something gently pressing against awareness. In early human environments, this kind of extended night would have been both ordinary and essential. Darkness lasted long enough that groups had to develop ways of existing within it. Not just enduring it, you lie near the fire, feeling the ground hold your body with steady support. The warmth is faint now, but still present, like memory made physical. A mainstream fact from evolutionary neuroscience is that human threat detection systems remain active during sleep at a reduced level, allowing the brain to respond quickly to potential danger, even without full conscious awareness. This background monitoring likely played a key role in early human survival during vulnerable nighttime periods. You feel that idea reflected in the way the group rests. No one is fully shut off from the world, even in sleep. There is a sense of partial presence. A lesser-known detail from studies of nocturnal behavior in traditional societies is that individuals often develop heightened sensitivity to familiar environmental cues, such as the sound of their own group members versus unfamiliar movement. This selective awareness helps maintain rest while still detecting meaningful changes in the environment. You begin to notice how the camp has its own sound identity. The fire, the breathing, the subtle movements of people who belong here. Anything outside that pattern would feel different, noticeable. The night continues to unfold slowly. The sky above is dense with stars, their light steady and distant, without artificial illumination. The heavens feel less like a background and more like a presence that surrounds everything equally. You realize that the boundary between earth and sky feels thinner here. A quirky detail often mentioned in studies of perceptual ecology is that in low-light environments, humans rely more heavily on auditory and tactile information than visual cues, which can alter spatial awareness and increase sensitivity to subtle changes in the environment. You experience that shift now. Sight is limited. Sound becomes primary. The body becomes an instrument of subtle detection. A small movement occurs near the edge of the firelight. It is not dramatic, just a shift in grass or a slight change in air. A few people become faintly more attentive, not fully awake, not alarmed, just adjusted. The sound resolves into nothing significant. and attention relaxes again. This cycle repeats through the night in different forms. Small variations arise, the group responds minimally, then returns to rest. It is a rhythm that does not interrupt sleep so much as coexist with it. You begin to understand that survival here is not about eliminating risk entirely. That would be impossible. Instead, it is about distributing awareness across time and individuals so that no single person carries the full burden of vigilance. A mainstream observation in social ecology is that many small-scale human groups develop shared risk management strategies, where attention, labour, and awareness are distributed across members in flexible patterns rather than fixed roles. This allows groups to function efficiently in environments where conditions change unpredictably. You can see that principle alive in this quiet moment. Some sleep deeply, some remain lightly aware, some drift between states without clear distinction. The fire continues to glow faintly, its light now more symbolic than functional. It marks the centre of shared presence rather than simply providing illumination. You feel your own awareness begin to soften at the edges, not fading, but loosening. Thoughts are less structured now. They move without urgency, like water finding slow paths through uneven ground. The sensation of time also shifts. Without clear events to measure it, the night feels continuous, stretched, unbroken. And yet, within that continuity, life persists in small signals, a breath, a shift, a distant call that does not approach. The group responds without coordination, yet in harmony. Attention rises slightly, then settles again. No words are needed, no explanation is required. A lesser-known detail from sleep anthropology suggests that in pre-industrial environments, human sleep was often lighter and more fragmented than modern expectations of uninterrupted rest, allowing for natural intervals of wakefulness that could be used for awareness, caregiving, or simple reflection. You feel that fragmentation here not as disruption, but as balance. Sleep is not a single state. It is a landscape of shifting depth. The fire dims further, becoming a soft red presence embedded in ashen wood. Above, the stars remain unchanged, distant witnesses to the slow passage of time. You begin to feel something subtle forming in awareness, not thought exactly, more like recognition. That survival is not a moment. It is a continuous arrangement of attention, rest, memory, and shared presence. Nothing here stands alone. Everything depends on everything else, and in that dependence there is stability. The night continues, and the circle remains intact. The night is now at its quietest point, the deep middle where time feels almost suspended, as if the world is holding itself still for a long breath. The fire has become a bed,